This is what it is, okay? I said empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
Welcome to the 31st episode of the Deployment Dojo. This is a live show where we introduce and discuss software installation topics using the WiX Toolset. I'm your host, Rob Mensching, and joining me once again is the first student and my very good friend, David Edson. David, how you doing, man?
Pretty good. Yeah.
All right, I'm running with a little bit of a cold, so if I sound funny or anything like that, I apologize, but I wanted to be here. And also, I don't know how many of you looked at the title for today's show and thought that, hey, we're going to pick up right where we left off. Last week being a very live show where we had a whole bunch of things not exactly go according to plan. I think that's probably safe to say, right, David?
Right.
But it was good. I like that sometimes because it lets you, you guys following along to go, oh yeah, sometimes even, experts can get tripped up. I just have a little bit more background to kind of know how to get my feet underneath me. But even small things, details like that, we could forget in this huge space of software installation. All right. But I changed the title of today's topic because as I was kind of setting up for today, I realized this would be a good demonstration of a problem that can happen when you're not using the WiX Toolset properly. And I'm properly is not probably the right word, optimally, or just things to think about that when you're in a larger team. I want to go through that experience of being with a larger team again. Does that make some sense, David? We're gonna pretend we're in that larger team, which means we're gonna have to pretend we're more people than we are. Right now, there's just the two of us, but we've had that experience before between the software developers working on the app, the build engineers taking care of all the build stuff for us, and then us acting as predominantly setup engineers, people taking care of the software installation, right? That's kind of the split we've had as we've been working through here, right?
Yes.
All right, so let's jump in real quick. Let me show you what's happened while we were away in the last week, really this morning. But let me go ahead and get us into it.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna open the belt test. We'll get going. Bert, Miyoko, Robson, Paul, it's great having all of you. I love this. We have 4 people. We're just missing Martin, right? I think it's just Martin. Maybe he's at a different time zone again. I don't know. Anyway, it's great to have all of you here. The more the merrier, and all of you that watch along when you can't make the live show right now. All right, so here we are. Everything's opened. Normally, the first thing I would be needing to do is to create a branch, right, Dave?
Right.
Right. Except today I want to point out one little thing down here. This icon down here, I don't normally look at because we're kind of working on our own, but today I wanted to go through the thought process of what if other devs were working on this project, not just you and I here and all that. There's a Martin. Sorry, I get introduced. I knew it. We're great. All right, we got the whole, and we have a Tom. This is great. Welcome all of you. This is fun. I love having more of you guys showing up. This is the more the merry. The more questions you guys ask, the more rabbit holes will go run down. All right. Sorry, where was I? We have incoming commits. That means somebody else has done work that we need to bring into our tree to make sure that we're up to date. Right? And we should generally do that before we start doing our work so that we're working on the latest stuff from everybody as opposed to, whatever we were doing last week. That makes sense, right?
Yes.
All right. So let's see. In Visual Studio, I can do view outgoing and incoming. All right. Now, we're operating kind of as our, software installation engineers, our setup engineers, our predominant focus is here. And what we've done is we've kept a very distant focus between, or a distinct separation. That's what I want. Distinct separation between the development and the setup team. And that's actually something I do not recommend at all. I don't recommend doing that at all. I think you should be much more integrated, and honestly, you should get to a place where all of your developers are working on both the code and the software installation, or at least they can. All right. So I want to start with where we're at here today, saying, hey, the dev team has centralized the settings handling into class library 1. All right.
Okay.
All right. So let's go see what they did. We'll bring this down. It's going to update all my code. Hey, yep, there's now a class library 1 in our project, where before we just had our console app, our Windows Form app on our Windows service. We now have a class library. Okay. And I think if I double click here, this will show me the files that were changed. It's a bit tight given how much is going on here. All right. And I'm going to look at what was changed as opposed to all these adds here. And if we look at our diff on our program, we can see that the whole get count file path is pulled out to this class 1. And okay, they removed this code of getting the registry key. All right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So they're, the whole reading the registry, they centralized it. Why? Well, because this was duplicated between our console app on our Windows service. Remember that?
Right.
We had this code twice. We had this whole path, this reg key and everything. So let's look at the service real quick. Here's the service code, and we can see, instead of initialize path, they say get the count file path, and they deleted that same duplicate code there too. All right. So it's like, okay, cool. So they have pulled out this code and they put it into this class 1, which is this new file, which is just get count file path, and it looks almost the same as the code before. All right. Yes. So no problem, right? This is great. They centralized this code. This is good. This should be great. Let's go ahead and build real quick, and let's take a look at where we're at. Bring up my sandbox, right? Because we're all going to do that.
Yep.
Bring up the sandbox. Build succeeded down here. Bring the sandbox onto the main screen. And we're just kind of like, all right, hey, it's been a week. What has the dev team been doing? Now, just between those of us here on the show, the dev team was me about 2 hours ago. But that's neither here nor there. We're telling a story. All right, let's get some of my windows sorted out. All these kinds of good things. All right, bin, x86, debug, enus. Let's install our built test package. Go, MSI, go. All right, so our folder is here. Yeah, this looks good. This is our stuff that we had before. This is taking longer than it should. And we're kind of like stuck. Why is it stuck? What's it doing? What's going on? Well, we've seen these kind of failures of getting stuck before. And if you remember, because we have a system service, did I tell you this trick? I feel like I gave you this tip. So here's a hot tip. If you're debugging services, I feel like we'd cover this in another episode. When your service fails to start or something is getting stuck and you think it's your service, go over to the service control manager and hit F5, and your service will show up in here, because the Windows installer will add the service before it starts it. Of course, it has to add the service before it can start it. And you can come in here while this thing is stuck and bring up the UI and try to hit start yourself and be like, oh, what's going on? And sometimes you'll get a better error message of why your service is failing to start. So this is a good thing. I feel like we covered this in an episode a while ago, but I'm going to cover it again. Mm-hmm. This is a great way to debug. Hey, why is my service busted? All right. And I just had a feeling it was a service. All right. Well, our service is busted. Let's see if our console app 1 works. Oh, our console app 1, and it actually fails with a pretty nice error message. File not found, could not load file assembly class library 1.
Okay.
Couldn't find it.
Right.
File's not here. Is class library 1 here? No.
Don't see it.
Don't see it. So what happened? Dev team did a refactoring. Dev team did all the work, did something on their machine. They tried it out. Worked great. Everything was running, and they checked it in, and now the whole product is broken because it won't install anymore. All right. So this problem is one of the big things that I set out to in the initial design of WiX to tackle, is to make it possible for all the developers to get in and fix the setup, update the setup, make the setup go as they're checking in these commits. All right.
Okay.
Does this make sense? This is kind of the first point I wanted to belabor. for people that haven't been familiar working with the team. Like, it would have been better if the dev team, when they committed the change for class library 1, that they also committed the change for the code to install class library 1.
Right.
So we were never in this state where, hey, you could build it, everything built just fine, but it does not install. All right. And because WiX can be installed on every dev's machine and every dev can use it and every developer can be working on it, they all can do the updates and they can test locally. They can even test the sandbox and make sure that the install actually works before they go forward when they add a file and things like that. All right.
Right.
Right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
All right. So let's go ahead and catch ourselves up. Now that we know that they've done this, we will go about and complain at some devs and talk to them. Now, and to be clear, in that complaining, what we really want to be doing is set up a relationship with the developer team to let them know, hey, next time you guys add files, change things, have impact on changing the shape, the installation shape of the product, adding, removing files, registry keys, shortcuts, any of those kinds of things, at least talk to us. Come, hey, let's have a chat. And we can be like, oh yeah, add this to your pull request, add some code to your pull request and we'll review it and we'll help you the first time. And as you spend more and more people out there understanding how to do this, then they'll get more comfortable just adding the files when they need to. The simple stuff they'll be able to do. And then you're just on a pull request and you'll be able to look at it and go, yeah, they added that file correctly. Or, right. Oh, they're doing something way more complicated. Let me jump in and help them. Both of those things work.
Right.
Yeah. So Paul has nailed the problem. So let us jump into episode 31. By the way, episode 31, for some reason, is hard. The 31st episode is hard to say for some reason. All right. Create a branch. Create. And let's grab the title. Oh, did I get the whole title? I don't think I did. That create the branch. Let's change our build command to update 31. Git changes. Start episode 31. Development process. Right? Something like that.
Yes.
Add that.
Into the development process.
Into the development process. Yeah. All right. Cool. Yes. Save, please. Took care. All right. Cool. We're all ready to start our work here. We got ourselves updated. We did a build. We did a whole bunch of stuff. We kind of jumped ahead into, let's go make sure everything works. And, well, it did. All right. So now we have some choices. All right. So first things first, new project. We need to make sure that it is built when we build setup. So we'll go and add our project reference. We haven't done this in so long. We haven't added a new project. It's almost like I've forgotten all the things. That's easy. Add a project reference and we're done.
Right.
Now the hard part, David. Where do we want to put the setup code for installing this library? Do we put it in here with the Windows service? Do we put it in here with the console code? Or do we create a new file and put it all by itself?
I don't know. Probably a new file. I mean, do you keep them separated like that? Like,
sure.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a little funky because our product is so small. This could very easily be one file.
Right.
But
it could have a bunch of different, forms or a bunch of different
absolutely
libraries and stuff.
Absolutely. And we're working our way up to more and more complicated applications. We've kind of paused and doing a whole bunch of configuration stuff. Don't worry, we're going to get up to more complicated and larger applications that are more than one file, exe or type things. But let's go ahead and add this DLL. And you said, let's add it to a new file. So let's go and I'm going to do it straight from scratch because I haven't done it in a while. Add new item. Show all templates, because last time we did this did not do what I wanted. Oh, that would have maybe given it. All right, what are we going to call this? We're going to call this class library 1. Being very creative with my names, I'm taking them exactly from Visual Studio. Whatever Visual Studio said it is, I said it is. All right, and we're going to put the components for class library 1 in here, right? Actually, I'm not putting the ones on there, so we'll just call this class library components. I don't know. We'll see.
Sure.
Whatever. All right. Now, where do we put our components in? Let's start with a component group ID, and I like to name it the same as the file usually, because that's really logical. Kind of like we name our source files in C# code, the name is the classes, so I like to name the files the same as the component group. The component group being like the heaviest part of this. All right, so, and the component group. And what directory are we going to install to? Do you remember the directory name, ID?
The install folder.
The install folder. That's right. We'll grab the install folder. All right, now we need a component. And inside that component, we need a file. The source will equal the name of the file we want. Class library1.dll. Ta-da?
Yep.
And that's it. This is what we would have hoped that the developer would have done when they checked in. Oh, no, there's one more part. All right, let's forget this part. We have to add it to our product.
Oh, okay.
Class library components. There we go. And probably in a pull request, that would have been the part that got missed. And of course, as the people that got added as the setups subject matter experts, SMEs, SMEs, I don't know. As the people that are supposed to know what we're doing, we would hopefully catch that and get everything going. All right?
Okay.
Okay. Boom. I think, no, I closed my sandbox. So while that is building, I'll bring my sandbox back. It says build succeeded here. That's good. Sandbox comes back. By the way, I don't know why the installation hung when it couldn't find that file. I would expect it to have it spit out an error at some point and give up trying to start that service. So I don't know what was going on inside, like the .NET framework starting the service and all that. That is a little bit of a mystery to me. I thought that was strange behavior that the install was just hung. But the fact that it was hung made me very happy that I was running inside a sandbox.
Right. Have you ever waited for it? Does it time out eventually?
I let it run for probably a half hour before I was like, just because I was curious to see what time, and I said, oh, no, that is busted. So I didn't dig into it. I expected some .NET Framework Windows service behavior because normally a service should fail and stop. But
right.
I don't know. All right, here we go. Double click, kick off the install. Oh, it's hung. Nope. It was fine. It just does take that 1 second. Our service should be here, and we know that it's now status is running, that we have a really good feeling that our class library is there. We'll bring up our console app, and boom, everything is fixed. And we're back right where we were before.
Right. That's good.
Nothing has changed except that we have refactored our application such that console app 1 and Windows service share this class library to load our configuration from the from a single block of code as opposed to having that split.
Right.
Right. Makes sense?
Yeah.
Yep. And you know, we go back and talk to the dev team, say, hey guys, we had to fix this. We want to let you go. And we need to do a better job of like communicating and making sure that these things happen right up front. Martin says start service actually doesn't handle errors well. It times out after 4 minutes. Try throwing exception on start. Yeah, so I think, Martin, the issue in this case is that the exe won't even start because it can't find one of its assemblies. So it's failing like very, very early in the service start process. And there are a couple, I have experience with this, a couple places that if you do not report back to the system control manager, the service control manager, sorry, SCUM, what this UI is based off of here, then I'm gonna do a refresh because it should be gone. Your service is just toast. I know this. Quick digression, minor story. When I was working on the trusted installer in Windows back in Windows Longhorn, what became Windows Vista, I ended up writing a test scenario that would cause every single system call to fail to test it heavily because we were installing the operating system. And I found a couple things that if I caused these system calls to fail at this particular time, the service was dead. It would not work. So I just went, all right, these calls cannot fail. And I went talk to some of the Windows guys that own that area, and they're like, yeah, you should be fine. So random story about system services. There are places that you can die that you can get stuck. All right, so that's it. We fixed it. Yay, right? We're done?
Yay.
We all ship out and go home?
Yeah, right.
All right, not quite. I am going to, I'm going to close Sandbox. We'll bring it back if we need it. All right. So this is good. Let's get this checked in because this is a good spot, right? This is add class library 1.dll to installation. Something like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. And I did hit the plus button, and I'm going to double check to make sure that all is good, because I always like to kind of look at my diff to make sure it did what I want it to.
Yeah.
We added project reference. Yes, we did. Isn't this so nice and clean, David? Look at this one line here in this. Sorry, I was just looking at a WiX 3 project for one of our customers, and it reminded me how ugly the WiX 3 projects are. We added this file, the class library, nice tight little file here, and then we have package, one component group, class library components. All right, that should do it then. I will commit this staged, and we're good to go. All right. So we got the file in there, and now that we got ourselves unbroken and we talked to the dev team and all that kind of stuff, let's take a step back and think about our problem. Do you remember the problem that we had before we ended up down all this path?
That's been a whole week. Jeez.
It has. So we're in here, and we need to get this component and this directory and this registry key to remember the data folder when we customized it, right? And all those different pieces of this not being lined up perfectly correctly. We basically need to sit and work with our settings for a little bit to get our configuration right.
Right.
And if you remember, one of the things that kept tripping me up on this configuration is that this is the full path to the file, not just the folder, right? So you had to put the full path name here, which is fine. It works. And for some reason, I wanted them split in my head. All right. So if we remember, if we customize this data folder, the Windows installer will not remember this registry, that will not remember the customization of the data folder for us for this component. Right. It'll reset back to default during uninstall even, because this registry key is the key path. So the Windows installer is optimizing and saying, oh, because you have a registry key path, we're not going to worry about remembering the directory for this data folder, and it just skips doing all that work for us. Right. Which is unfortunate because we really wanted it to remember that folder. So we need to remember that folder.
Right.
Right. Okay. Now the next thing also to think about is this component the right place to put things now that we have class library over here? Should this class library be responsible for setting up this reg key, or should this component just move to this class library and the component should be over here? You know, so this is one of these like structure things I was thinking about going, this registry key here is really controlled by that class library now, not by the Windows service.
Okay, yeah, I see that.
Right? So I was thinking, what if we pick this component up and we refactor our code a little bit, and we go, you know what, you class library, you are responsible for configuring this. All right? So this class library is now responsible for keeping track of this registry key. Why? Because if we go look at class library code, he's the only one that actually has any reference to this registry key.
Okay, yeah.
Because this registry key doesn't exist in the service, it doesn't exist in the console app anymore. It's just referenced by this DLL. So this guy is the guy that now controls that, right?
Right. And
Windows service and console app get to the fact that this data is stored in registry key through this class library, and they don't have to worry about it. So I think bringing this logic here is probably a good change.
Yeah, it makes sense.
All right, cool. Now, what did I say? I said we need to remember the data folder value, right?
Right.
Okay, wouldn't it be nice if we could just remember the data folder value separate from the name of the file that we want to customize it? That would be helpful, right? So it'd be a little cleaner. We wouldn't have to like take off this file name off the end of it. What if we changed our registry keys to be this being the folder and this being the file name, and we split these two things? How does that look? That might make our lives a little easier, right?
It looks a little bit more easier to read, I guess. Understand.
Well, it's not a little easier. Now, if we want to say, hey, where did we store the path for data folder? Well, we put it in this reg key right here. Oh, is there any other stuff? No, that is the whole path right there. This one registry key will contain the path of our of where our file will be. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
right? So now we have a place that we could say, hey, if we could read this registry key, we would know exactly where this folder is, right? But we have a problem. This is not what the code does today. This is not the way the code behaves at all right now. It expects it to look like a single key with both of them stuck together, right?
Right.
Which is not as convenient necessarily for us. So what if we as developers on this team, in this same organization, go ahead and update it to make our lives a little bit easier? So this is the other half of... I'm going to update the comment before I forget, because I will forget. I really want it better. Okay. Sorry. All right. If this is going to work better for us, and I'm kind of leading in the future of why, let's go ahead and make the change to the code, right? We go talk to the dev team, say, hey, you know what? It would help us if we changed the product. It would help us on the setup side if we changed the actual product code on your side. You're like, all right, let's work together. So let's go do that real quick. All right. I want to change it. So if I change this code right now and check in, we're busted, right?
Right.
It's not going to be working correctly because these two registry keys here do not match what the code expects. All right. So let's go update the code. All right. So how do I want to do this? There's so many different ways I could do this. I think I'm just going to do folder and file name.
Yeah.
All right. And then I'm going to say, this isn't perfectly clean, but it's, it's all right for what we're doing here. Nobody's critiquing my C# that much, I hope. They're mostly just focused on the setup code. File name. All right, so now we're reading our two registry keys, right?
Right.
That we just made up. Let's say our folder, if our folder is empty, set folder equal to, just as before, the location where it was before. And then if our file name is empty, then let's default it still to that which it was before. Windows service one.txt. There we go. All right, cool. So we kind of defaulted our values if we don't find them, or if we have problems reading the registry keys, we'll fall back to these. Let's go ahead and get the full path. This is not necessary, but nice. All right. Oh, look, we had this code before. Create directory, get directory name from path, because it was all one thing. We don't have to do that anymore. We can just say, create the folder, and then set path equal to path.combine. Wow, look at that. Sometimes the Visual Studio IntelliSense stuff is really quite good. All right, cool. We just kind of refactored the code a little bit, right? We read two registry keys now, and then we set the defaults to those, those two values should there be any problem reading those registry keys. And then we create the directory just like we did before, and then we set the path to the folder and file name, and everything should be good. All right?
Yep.
Okay. We would need to run this by the developer that actually owned this code, assuming that, we as a setup team didn't own this code. But that's fine. Just make sure everybody's on the same page, then we're going to go send the PR. But before we send them the PR, what do we need to do?
Test it.
Let's go bring it up. Let's just see how it works. Bring up Dojo. Boom, boom, boom. All right, here we go. And here we are as the setup team pushing requirements back into the product to make the product easier for the setup to work. All right. And this is something that I see a lot of teams struggle with. Not always. There's a lot of people I've seen that try to do backflips by changing their by changing the setup or trying to solve the problems in setup instead of just going, if we change the actual product, this would be easier. I'm not saying all problems are easier solved inside the product versus thing. My point is solve the problem where it is best solved. If you can make your app easier to install, do that instead of making your install harder. That's the thing I want to do. All right, let's run the console app 1 real quick. That looks good. Let's see if we actually did anything, because the only way we can tell if we did anything is if we go look in the registry, right?
Yep.
Because in the end, this is all a big no-op, except that we should have 2 registry keys instead of just the one with the path in it. Local machine, system, down into the, I forgot. System, no, not system, software. Software into the 32-bit WoW key, and there's our belt test, and look at that. I know this is a little small, but we have 2 keys. file name and folder. One says data.txt, and the other is, ta-da, look at that, our whole path to the data folder.
Nice.
So we just did the work, as setup developers to change the product to make it easier for us to store the path to this data folder because the Windows installer isn't remembering it for us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now you're like, why would we want to do this, Rob? Why bother doing all this work? Why bother changing the product and all this kind of stuff? That we are doing next time. Not today. Today we are going to commit. What do you want to talk about, David? Any questions, thoughts, things that have come to mind as I go ahead and get this ready to get committed?
Well, I know. I guess what you're alluding to is, so next time if you do some custom data folders, it'll still remember it because of the way you're doing your registry key now, right?
Yeah, that's the thing for us to figure out.
Yeah.
And Paul has asked the question, should we add these registry keys to the file, like where the file's being installed? And that's actually not a bad idea either. Maybe we should do that. Do you prefer that, David? You're the student. I'm going to let you call it. We could either put these registry keys in with this file, because they do go with this file, or we could keep them separate as the component that configures these registry keys.
It's kind of hard for me to say. Like, so if we had more keys and more other libraries eventually, how would we do it then, right? So
yeah, it's a question.
I don't really have a...
It's kind of a toss-up. In general, though, you want to keep your components small, because changing components is challenging. Like changing the way they're structured over time, when you start thinking about upgrades and things like that, we'll dig into those problems in the future, is harder. So you want to keep your components smaller than larger.
So we would leave this data file that we're using here for counting or whatever would pretty much be confined to this. If we had any other data files or whatever other databases or whatever else we were connecting to, we would do a completely different component, right?
Yeah, we could. Yeah, exactly right. Like if we didn't have the count file, but we had the other file, whatever it is, yes, then we could create another component and put that configuration in there.
Right.
And it's a good question, and it's not perfectly clear, but generally I recommend erring on the side of smaller, especially if those things are going to change.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is probably a good place for us to start. But you could debate, no, I think these registry keys should be tightly bound to files. And Bob points out you also want the strong path. So if you remember that key path concept we talked about, and the Windows installer checking which of these things are on the machine to do quick checks to know if the app is fully installed. By having this reg key out here, it is then able to check this reg keys. If it's only the file, it might skip over checking the registry keys. Small thing. So, but again, it's all small. It's not a hard. I don't have a hard fast rule. I kind of like where we've ended up here, even though it was mostly part of the story, as opposed to a really hard way that we were definitely working that. Repairs should in the end repair all the keys, because repair is going to say, hey, yeah, repair these things in the end. That's why repairs are so slow. But quick checks would get skipped. Martin, you're right. Quick checks. Martin was bringing up repairs also. All right. I need to write some words here. What did we do? We split count file path registry key into folder and file name parts. All right. Something like that.
Yep.
Okay, and we verified everything works. So I think we are done here for the day. Other questions, things to think about. 3 outgoing. Yep, okay. All right, I have 3 outgoing.
Yeah, what's
start? Oh, I added a class library as a separate step. Yep. There we go. Normally there's only 2. I was like, wait, what? Yep. All right, push. Create a pull request, please. Open up our window. Other things to think about, David.
No, I can't think of any that won't be on the next.
Yeah, you're like, oh, no, I want to talk about all this stuff next week. And I'm sure everybody else is like, wait, he's not going to leave us a cliffhanger. I'm like, well, given the fact that we try to keep these things closer to 30 minutes than an hour, yes, that's exactly what I'm going to do. And we haven't had a developer process. I wanted to tell this story. I want to kind of have something. And this is the first one that I hit, that this is a real place where you can see very easy for a normal software developer to just make changes and not think about the software installation impact, and how by having WiX in their solution, right, they can make these changes, we can make these changes. And also when we have a change that we're thinking, hey, we want to make this for setup reasons, we can just go straight into the code and do so, both the code and the setup. And this is the real power of the WiX toolset that I wanted to really kind of try to drive home in a very small and not conflated. It's a made up example, but it's real, and this is the same exact things that you could have in your company, probably just at larger problems. And there's been a number of times where companies have hired FireGiant, and then I would go out and meet with the teams, and we spend, we're talking 50, 60 people in there to sit and talk about all the parts, the moving parts, and help people organize their code so that they can move the various pieces. I remember one company, actually one of the very first companies I went out to, the manager brought me out. He was a new manager. He came in and his guys kept getting sick because he had 5 people that were doing all the setup for like a 300 person team. So these 5 people were responsible for doing all the work. And I think I told the story about Microsoft Office, where the setup team, the first Office setup team, grew to like 30 people. And so it's a lot of times just going into those teams and helping them break down their work so that they do not become such a bottleneck, and that they're not working constantly and the team getting sick. It was like a whole quality of life thing. It was one of the more satisfying jobs I was able to go on and kind of sit with these guys, because they were working hard and they knew what they were doing, and help them explain their challenges and their needs to the rest of the organization, and then help them work through that whole organization such that everybody bought more into what they're doing, and they ended up with a process that is exactly like what we just did here, just at a much larger scale project than 4 files, a service, a WinForm, and a console app that reads from a text file.
Right.
But it's the same top and bottom.
Right. Well, that makes sense.
Boom, merged. All right, so that was today's episode. We're going to jump right back to configuration next week. And I don't know if we'll finish. We might finish it up, but we still have that pesky data folder not being set correctly when we uninstall. That has not been solved. All we've done is kind of move things into places. But it's going to be a good conversation. And I think, David, we get to do some upgrades again, which we haven't been testing here in a while.
Oh, yeah, we haven't.
Yeah, so that'll be a thing. We'll be doing that again. All right, so until then, Tom, welcome. I'm glad this is so helpful for you. You keep working on it. Keep banging on it. We're going to catch up to all those things that you're talking about. We're going to get the self-contained .NET 8 web applications or something. Self-contained web application maybe isn't a thing. But we'll get there. We'll get to all that advanced later stuff very soon. Not too long. That story is coming soon. That arc will be here near. Until then, the rest of you and Tom too, everyone, keep coding. We'll be back in a week. Bye.
See ya.